Welcome. Thanks again for joining us here at Heart of the Father, where we take time just to sit in the presence of our Father God, receive His love. From that place of abiding in Him, embracing our identity in Christ, we see lasting fruit. And today again, I'm here with my good friend Arturo. Arturo, welcome.
Thank you.
It's just been good to be in the midst of this conversation with you. And last week we left off where literally Arturo had really been encountering God, but hadn't yet surrendered. He's asking some questions. I was at a meeting where, man, some of the father wounds, and so if you didn't watch that video, go back and watch it. It'll bring context. But some of the things in his life that he's struggling with, a lady's speaking into those things, and he's wrestling with those questions. So Arturo, pick up there where, man, you're sensing God at work, and that leads to encountering Jesus. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, so again, so I was left with, where do I go from here? What do I do? It made me feel warm inside. It had all those feelings, but at the same time I was like, it doesn't make it go away. And the other part of that story where I feel like really projected me towards pursuing Jesus was the lady that we went to go listen to, and she was going to share her stories, and she was a missionary. She had basically lost her whole family in an accident. Her 2 boys and her husband had died in a car accident. I believe, if I remember correctly, on his birthday. And if you met this woman, she was just full of life and joy, and it threw me for a spin because I was here feeling sorry for myself, and she's sharing her testimony, and I'm like, how can you be functioning? You lost everything in an instant, but you're happy, you're full of joy, you're not dwelling on it, and you acknowledge that it hurt and it was hard, but it didn't ruin you or make you depressed. And so at that time, that's kind of how I was feeling, a little depressed, a little feeling sorry for myself. And so really those 2 things were what, from then on, I was like, I don't know that I believe all this stuff, but she's an example of something in her life has changed her, or something's happening that's making her be that way, and I want to at least see if it's true, if it's real. That's when that curiosity just sparked, and when they invited me to church next, I was like, okay, I'll go. And I came, and it wasn't boring. It didn't feel like empty words, or it wasn't void. I feel like now I'd gone to church before, whether it was mass, or I had gone with other friends to Christian church and churches. But now the words were actually landing. When the pastor was up sharing and teaching, I was like, okay, I understand. This is making more sense. And yeah.
Wow. So after you went to church for a while, when did you feel like you said yes to Jesus? I know you're saying it's a process of saying yes, but then when was that encounter? I was like, okay, God, I'm in. I want to let go of my past and hurt.
Absolutely. It's exactly that. I knew that over time, attending church, being around this family, I knew that I wanted in on this. But I knew the thing that was stopping me was all this unforgiveness and bitterness that I had in my heart. And so I thought back, and this was months later. At this point, I'm 3-4 months down the road, wrestling, and I'm like, okay, she said that back then, that I need to forgive my father. And it's not always they deserve to hear those words or for them, but I need to let go. And I just kind of started going down that rabbit hole. Okay, I want to pursue a relationship with my father. Long story short, I ended up convincing my mom to move out and bring my brothers with, and I saved enough money to get us a townhome that I was renting, and my father hated me for it. And he felt I took away his family, and so for about 2 years we didn't speak. And when the Lord started kind of really just changing my heart, I just wanted to pursue a relationship not just for like my sake, but I started feeling compassion and sympathy, and that hatred and bitterness kind of started to leave. But yes, it didn't happen overnight, but I definitely had to take steps. And when I gave my life to Jesus, probably like 3 or 4 months after being in that barn, I think I had just gone to a place like, okay, I don't want to wait anymore. I believe this. Yeah, I'm going to really pursue Jesus. He's God. So.
When you did that, did you notice anything initially, or was it just over time, as far as any changes in your bitterness or your joy? Or
Yeah, I would say that was the moment that when I started feeling the compassion and the sympathy for my father. I started asking my mom questions about, was he always like this? And come to find out, my mother shared, intimate things in their relationship, but about my father's childhood that he went through that I'd never known. And I started understanding, he's in pain too. And he did a lot of hurtful things to the family, but for whatever reason, I didn't view it anymore as like just anger towards the person. It was now more like, okay, I can't save you, I can't heal you, but I want to know that, I want you to know that I'm here for you.
Wow.
And I forgive you. So.
That's amazing. Changing your perspective. Just your relationship with Dad is so huge, and I know a lot of us struggle, or have had struggles with one of our parents. It's not because our parents are necessarily right or wrong. I mean, they can be doing things that are extremely hurtful, or sometimes it's just because they're not. They may be amazing parents, but we're struggling with that. Just our own perspective on what's going on. So, I encourage you to lean into that. But Arturo, go ahead and tell us then. I know you've had involvement with missions. I mean, your life has been an amazing journey to watch. Still as a young man, seeing all the things that God's done.
Yeah.
That led you into missions, led you to meeting your precious wife, Erin. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it all goes together. The story that kind of changed, or the time that kind of changed my father and I's relationship, he ended up being in the hospital, had a lot of, his health was bad. And we had a moment where he just had nowhere to go, he didn't have a home, and my mother at this point had asked me and was like, can he stay here because he really has nothing? And I was like, of course, at this time, I had gone on a missions trip with the church. I'd been involved in the youth group and as a leader, and I don't even know, I do remember how I got roped into going. I didn't want to go because in my head I was still thinking so practically, like, I can't miss work, I got to pay bills, and I had no context to what, like, fundraising. They were like, you can fundraise, and I was like, what are you talking about? And so I ended up getting convinced to go on this trip to Honduras, which changed my perspective on just what I read in the Bible. And when it talks about Jesus and why he died on the cross and all this stuff, it started to become so real to me, and there are people that I don't know, and I started feeling so convicted. We would go and do amazing work, and I would leave sometimes and be like, did that lady that we talked to, or we helped build her house, but did she know Jesus? Like, is someone else ever gonna ask her, did she know? Could I, and it just started bothering me, like, I couldn't shake it. So I come back, and now it's unraveling, and people are like pushing me in the direction, like, hey, I think you're gonna end up doing missions, And I was like, no, I have responsibilities, and my dad's back in the picture, and I was weary, like, is he gonna stay clean? And I had so much like trust issues, if you can say, and so I finally had a moment of like, I had to confront my father and be like, I thought in my head, I'm gonna, let him know, like, hey, please, respect this. And before I had this conversation, I felt the Lord just be like, love on him, and basically like let him know that he's a very capable father. And I was like, okay. And I basically talked to him, and I said, look, you were my brother and I's father. You are a husband to my mother. You guys are still married. This isn't my responsibility to take care of anyone. And he wept, and he felt so free from that. He felt like, he's like, I didn't know I needed to hear that. And from then on, I felt released to basically pursue missions. And I go on and I do, I mean, you were there the whole time live during this process, because I was so back and forth, like, is it going to be okay? Like, is he going to stay clean? And I remember having conversations with you where you were like, you have to trust the Lord, you know? It might not be perfect, but just have faith. Like, if he's told you to go, then do it. And at the time, one of our friends had come back and done a missions training that was amazing in Colorado. I was so freaked out by this group of young people, because I had been around some of them because of her, and I was like, man, these guys are wild. And I ended up going. I mean, I was hard-headed. I didn't just say yes, but long story short, the people in that community helped change my life, and I ended up, through a series of events, I ended up going to Indonesia, which I never thought I would. And that's where I met Erin, where she was also doing missions. And, yeah.
Erin's a gift from the Lord, obviously. How long have you guys been married?
We've been married for like 2 months, so we're fresh.
Okay. So we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but just tell me, is there something, you've only been married 2 months, but if you were to encourage somebody else that's maybe dating or engaged, and what's one thing that's been impactful? Because obviously I've had the privilege of interacting with you and Erin, that you'd say, hey, here's something that I would encourage you in your relationship.
We, from early on in dating, we knew that we wanted to make like Jesus a priority. And I know, like, duh, you know, like, yeah. But in the sense of like, I really want to pursue Jesus, not just like on my own, but I want to set him in the middle of everything that we do, how we talk. If we're meeting each other, like, hey, let's have Jesus like be who convicts us. And we had, I don't remember who, I do remember who, but I have, they're like parents to me, but one of her sayings was always like, it's like a race to the cross, like first to the cross wins, you know? And when she would always say that, I'm like, okay, that's a cool saying. But now looking back on it, there's been moments where, you know, we get upset, or I get upset, and I think back to that, and I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I want to do that, but having Jesus be the center of it all makes it a little easier to just be like, okay, I'll submit. Even if I feel I'm right, I'll choose just to be, you know, submit to Jesus and have him help me love Erin better. And I don't always do it perfect, but.
Sure. Well, none of us do. Todd, who's behind the camera, and myself, we've been following Jesus for a long time, and been married for 30 plus years, but you know, it's good to hear from somebody that's just been walking with Jesus a little shorter time. You still have some time with the Lord and also with Erin, just for a couple months. But I just encourage people today, those who've been watching, you know, run to the cross. Wow, that's so powerful. And that works in any relationship. It's not just Arturo, it's myself. I'm sure you as well. It's like, man, I know I'm right on this one. Well, sometimes when I know that I know I'm right, I end up realizing later on I was wrong. And even if I was right, that's not the point. Jesus showing up in the situation. Jesus wants to reveal his love to me. He wants to reveal his love to my spouse, and same with Arturo and Erin. He wants to show up in their marriage, and when we do that, when we run to the cross, he shows up and speaks to us and speaks to our spouse. And so Arturo shared some really rich things. Thanks for being open. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being vulnerable. There's so much there with his relationship with his father, his obedient yes in so many areas. That's what I would encourage you today. here at Heart of the Father. Receive that love from the Father, and in that place, just keep saying yes. Sometimes you know that you're loved, sometimes you don't feel loved. But have the courage just to say yes to Jesus, and He's going to take you a long ways. I'm excited, Arturo, to see where God takes you in the years and decades ahead, and it's going to be good. But thanks again for joining us this week. And we're going to continue in this series. We're just excited about all the stories of Jesus showing up in people's lives, and come back and join us.